think I've been forgetting socks. I don't know that I have a routine or a common genesis procedure for the plays I've written. I can only talk about my most recent play, which is as yet unproduced and largely unread. Perhaps because it's flawed in its origin, but it came out of my rage and sense of helplessness about the torture policies of the prior administration, but also about the widespread ignorance about what actually happened in our names, and the paradox that I stole from an academic writer on this subject. I'm an academic in the daytime, I'm a werewolf at night. That torture and terrorism are mirror images of each other. That torture violates all of humanity's standard rules and norms, and the response of civilized societies forever, since terrorism began, has always been torture, whether we're talking about the French fighting the Algerians, whether we're talking about our own troops against the Viet Cong. When the asymmetrically weakened side chooses terrorism, the West, the wealthy, the asymmetrically more powerful side chooses torture. So I wanted people to understand that our sin is their sin through a mirror darkly. And I did it by having a Britney Spears song parody, Waterboard Me One More Time. Still working on it.
Thanks. That was fascinating. Everybody seems to have a very different methodology. I want to open it up. We have just a few minutes for questions from you, for our panel. Anybody have a question? Yes.
What's been the one time when you've seen a production of your work where you've been astonished, similar to what Jerry had with Donn?
Wait, astonished as in like bad astonished or good astonished?
most memorable astonished.
Most memorable? Oh, can I? You have to go in order because I have.
No, please.
All right, so I have an awesome story for you, sir. So, like within IU, they have a lot of collab courses, and the one I'm actually taking this year is with the Public Theater, and which is great. I'm not going to name any names, but there was, and this goes to going to the whole idea of collaboration as a playwright when you're working with your work, is that some people have different ideas of that. And what I usually do are very dark, fucking foreboding pieces where you're like, oh my god, and you're shaking. Maybe there's a little laugh there, but it's like a gut punch. And the director I have, God bless her soul, she's great and talented, and she had a great idea with these lights. I can't really explain, but she did a great idea with lights. But she's a comedy director. She likes things that are happy. And so, so you're dealing with, we had this 10-minute play that, make a long story short, it's two guys that are about to be executed, and it was kind of in this kind of world where they persecute homosexuals, but they kill them, and it's in a world where they're forced to actually sit there and wait and watch their fellow prisoners be marched off to be executed. And you have these two political prisoners who, one's very much like radical, and the other one's kind of trying to be like the political side, and they're both trying to find some peace in the fact that they're going to die without actually realizing their hopes and dreams, and trying to end this type of crazy persecution. And what does it mean to be helpless in this type of world? And of course it brings back to today's modern world and what's going on right now. And they made it funny. They made it funny, and then like it wasn't. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was not laughing when I saw it. No. You know, like there are lines that like the audience was sitting there and they're like rolling, and I was like, what? How can you play that guy? You know, but at the same time, you know, it was it opened my eyes to the idea that when there's different types of eyes that are looking, you know, and who's to say that still didn't affect them? And maybe the only way they can deal with that type of tragedy was to laugh. I mean, some things are too much for you to actually, you know, want to deal with. So you laugh in the face of darkness. But yeah.
I have a similar one, I think. Yeah. Here at Georgetown, my first play that I ever wrote was called In Digital Time, and it was about a football player who was 35 years old, so kind of at the end of his career, and he blew out his knee. and for the first time was going to have to live not just in digital time where you just see that minute, you live in the moment, but you have a different kind of expectation. And as an 18-year-old college freshman, I think I was in a pretty good place to write about a midlife crisis of a football running back. And it was directed actually by Chris D'Amico, who was here on the earlier panel. And he and I tended to butt heads, and he asks the provocative question usually. And he said he was a brilliant director of this play. And he said, I have this great idea for the end. At the end, we're going to have Let the Good Times Roll play, the music. And I said, Chris, it's clear to me that you have no idea what the play is about. That doesn't work. Absolutely not. And he said, do me a favor, just watch it one time through with that at the end. And if you hate it, we'll talk about it. He didn't say, we'll change it. We'll talk. So I said, fine, and watched the play like this. And Let the Good Times Roll came on at the end. And I burst into tears. It was absolutely brilliant and right. And he turned around to me like, and I was like, and what I learned from it was two things. First of all, playwrights should even a good director, I was a pretty good director, not great, but pretty good. Playwrights should never direct their own work because otherwise all the characters will stand at the front of the stage and speak very clearly. And number two, having written your work, you need to send it out and let other people have the experience of it. And I learned that as a playwright from him and from doing that, but also I think as a writer, I learned that if a book forms a perfect circle, the writer has to go far enough in creating the circle that the reader can complete the circle. But if you go too far, there's nothing for the reader to do. And if you don't go far enough, it's a sort of a mess, and the reader gets lost. And finding that place, the gap to leave, I think is something that I learned as a playwright and that I'm still trying to perfect as a writer.
Great, thank you. Anybody else?
As a playwright, you often direct your own work.
You said that very clearly.
No, I had an experience. What you said reminded me of it. I had written a play that had been produced a couple of times and I thought was a comedy, and had been funny in its initial jaunts out, and then it had been done like in workshops, and then it was recommended to a theater in the Midwest and got a full production. And I was acting in a show, so I had to arrive 10 days late because the show closed and then I could go into rehearsal. And I got there, and I could tell, I got off the plane and was driven to the rehearsal, and the actors just looked at me like, you are the reason we are suffering. And I didn't know, it was an unusual situation, and I said, could y'all just do a run-through for me? Just run what you've done so far. And, and the play dealt with very serious issues, but I intended it as a comedy. The difference being, it was a family play, and it had very serious issues in it. But this family, although they had lots of secrets and didn't know each other very well, really did love each other. And the actors were playing it like this is a family that had lots of secrets and didn't know each other very well and really hated each other. So all I basically said for the next 2 weeks is, remember that you all love each other. And, how could I love her if I'm doing this? How could I love him if I said, in my experience, again, which is outside the accepted norm, we only say horrible things to our family members. We have a right to say horrible things to. We treat each other within families. Have you ever listened to a 14-year-old talk to their mother? It's a disaster. So, and the play was a huge success and won like the American Theater Critics Award for Best Play Outside New York. This is a while ago. And that the first time that show got in front of an audience, that was a very joyful experience for me. But after the show, being with the actors, having known where we started and where we got to, that was the best, you know, because our job as directors and as writers is to take care of these people that we love and that, you know, to make them not look bad when they're on the stage. And so the after that, you know, and it was a very joyous run, but the after was the best part.
Great, thanks, Gus. Anybody else? Miranda?
I think that one of the most important, astonishing things about being a writer and a playwright is the realization that after a group of other people have read through and presented your atrocious first draft, that you are still alive. And that's something for which I am very grateful. But I think that one of the most important, astonishing moments for me has also been knowing that, because, you know, we're all Georgetown students or faculty, and there can be some pretty big personalities on this campus. And sitting in the audience of Witness as the Donn B Festival, and at the end, this was like the third time that I'd seen it, so I'd sort of gotten over the shock of like seeing my own work. And seeing the really cool guys who are like way too cool for school come up to me after the play with tears in their eyes and being very moved by something that I had made was a great moment of astonishment, and that was really wonderful.
Thank you all. We're running out of time, and it seems appropriate that we end with our newest playwright here in the college, and also with the question about astonishment. If anything all of us have learned from Donn B. Murphy is to astonish him, and look what they have done.